Built into this hillside is a real-life Hobbit house that I built in the countryside of New Zealand, and it's complete with epic features like a circular wooden door, a beautifully lush sod roof, handcrafted stone walls, and even a functioning fireplace. I'm gonna show you my entire process of building this from start to finish, and then put it to the test by spending 24 hours living here to see if a Hobbit house would actually make for a usable living space. This is without a doubt one of my most unique builds ever, and one of the most breathtaking places on the planet, and that place is none other than New Zealand. I walked along the side of this creek for the better part of an afternoon, and after hours worth of searching, I finally stumbled upon the perfect spot.
Dude, I found it. This is perfect. I mean, look at this. The ground's flat, the hill's steep, it's not too rocky. This place was made for a Hobbit house to be built into it. And on top of that, this is such a scenic spot. It's right next to the river, it's by the road so we can get supplies here easily. Let's get to building.
I was making slow but steady progress with the shovel until I ran into some solid rock and had to bust out the pickaxe.
There actually is quite a bit of rock in this hillside, but luckily it's shale, which is a pretty crumbly rock, so this pickaxe is making light work of it. I feel like miner 49er or something. I'm mining for gold in these here hills. This reminds me of that time I helped excavate a T-Rex tibia. Now that was quite the shindig.
This ended up being so much more work than expected, but after countless shovelfuls of rock, it was finished.
All right, that should just about oh my gosh. Obviously, we want the bottom layer of our wall to be the sturdiest and made from the biggest rocks, so I'm taking some extra time and care to pick out the perfect stones.
And I ran these perfect stones all the way across the base, which made for a nice stable first layer.
Now with the first course in place, now we need to keep building upwards. But this wall isn't gonna be nearly as strong as it needs to be if it's held together with nothing but positive vibes, so I picked up some of this. Mortar. You just add some of this to a bucket, mix in some water, and now we have a big old glob of rock sauce. We can spread this between our stones to keep them glued together.
This mortar is what'll give the wall its strength and make it so much more stable than if the rocks were piled up dry.
Now that I've been doing this for a while, I feel like I'm finally starting to get the process down. First, I just slather some mortar on the rocks I'm about to place it on. Then I pick out a stone that fits the shape and hoist her on there. And then I just slop a little extra mortar around the edges. I found my hands work best for shaping the crevices.
I continued this painfully slow process until the wall was about halfway done, and that's when an audience showed up.
Look at this. I have an audience now.
And given that I'm building on an active sheep farm, it should be no surprise that plenty of these guys came to check on my progress.
This is the most New Zealand moment in the world right now. Chilling with some sheep while building a Hobbit house.
They actually seemed pretty interested in the build, and since I was down here all alone most of the day, it was really nice to have some new friends to hang out with. But the sheep didn't distract from progress, and I kept on working my way up the wall.
Especially as we get close to the top, this is really starting to feel like a jigsaw puzzle. Every single one of these river rocks is different, and we just have to figure out how they fit together best. And on the very top, I'm trying to find some rocks that make for this really nice natural arc. And just to finish her off, I'll do one more pass sealing up all the open cracks with mortar. I'm doing it all nice and pretty with the thing for the camera, but in all reality, I'm probably just gonna glop it around with my hands a little. All right, better keep Humpty Dumpty away from here because we have ourselves a wall. Considering I've never built one before, I'd say this thing turned out looking pretty dang good. Maybe I need to start a new career as a stonemason. I mean, it couldn't be any worse than when I worked in a genetics lab. I combined cheetah DNA with crab DNA. Things went sideways so fast. Basically, the plan is to add 2 big logs in the center that'll fall directly on each side of the door, and then we can add 2 smaller logs on the sides, and then the top and cross support. But these first 4 vertical logs are gonna anchor the entire front wall to the ground, so we need to dig some pretty good sized holes to put them in.
So after checking our diagonals to make sure the whole thing's square, I started digging 4 deep and narrow holes that'll provide strong grounding for the front wall, and I made them evenly spaced out.
Was that shot cool, guys? I put a GoPro down in there.
We're digging a daggum hole to China. Or I guess if we're in New Zealand, Connecticut? Oh. This reminds me of the time I dug a well outside an optometrist office and some poor guy fell into it after his eye surgery. Guess he couldn't see that well. Holes are dug, and I made each one of these go down about 1 meter. Americans, 1 meter is basically a yard. Why do we struggle with this so much? And now we can add our logs. So I'm putting one in each hole, measuring them to the corresponding height of the wall, cutting them to size, and packing them back in place with rocks and plenty of dirt. Okay, Papa likes what Papa sees. Now the real test of sturdiness is, can I climb on top and juggle oranges? Yep. She's sturdy, all right. Now that our columns are providing a firm foundation for this wall, we can add the rest of our frame, starting with the top centerpiece. All I'm doing here is picking out the right log, cutting it to size, adding a notch in each end, just like I did in the Alaska cabin video. Boom. fits like a puzzle piece. And now I can secure this down with these big old timber lock screws. Oh. Oh, holy Moses. The drill's struggling a little, so I might just use it like a screwdriver for some of these. That worked, we're all good. And now we have a pull-up bar. Hobbit Hole, more like Hobbit Swole. Gandalf, more like Gainsdolf. Bilbo Baggins, more like... Yeah, I don't really think there's a pun there. And now for the other two roof pieces, I'm cutting them to size, marking out exactly how they need to be shaped, and making an angled cut on each side before screwing them in place just like the last one. And there we have it, our frame's in place. Nice and stable and pretty dang cool looking. Little dots. Next, I'm taking a flexible piece of pipe and screwing it 6 centimeters below the dots, which is the distance between the router's bit and edge. And of course, I'm allowing the pipe to bend to its natural curve, which is making this really smooth. And finally, I can fire up this generator and use the router to carve our curve.
This took several passes and broke a few bits, but the cut was so clean.
There we go. She's a curvy girl. This went exactly to plan. It matches the back wall super well and looks amazing on its own, which is really important because in the finished product, this is the only wall you'll see from the outside. Now it's time to carve out our door, which is arguably the most important part of this entire project. To cut out the door, we need to get a little creative. I'll measure the distance between the two logs, mount the router on a plank that's half that distance long, secure it right in the middle of the logs, and use that like a compass as I make several passes to carve out the door. No way that actually worked. This is so cool.
And I did this the exact same way I did the door.
Call that window the London Bridge, because she is falling down.
Woo! 3 circles. It's like Mickey Mouse
if his ears got cut off. And to finish things up, I'll add screws to some of the spots where boards are no longer supported. She's good to go.
And just like that, our front wall's complete.
Now we have a back wall, now we have a front wall, now we need side walls, which need to come up to the curve on each side. I was gonna use planks for this far side, but the back wall is super uneven here, and there's this super awkward rock sticking out of the hill, so I realized it might be easier to just use stone.
So I went on a few more walks down to the creek bed, wheelbarrowed back a brand new pile of rocks, mixed up another batch of that sweet, sweet mortar, and built the side wall using the same method as before.
Hope you enjoyed your 8-second time lapse. That was an entire day for me. But hey, this turned out looking pretty dang good. It's almost like it's not the first stone wall I built.
And now it's time to put a wall on the other side. I screwed these boards in place all the way up the wall.
Wall number 4, there she is. We built one wall, then we built another one, and then we built another one, and then we built
another one.
Hey, you heard it from the man. Now that all 4 walls are up, this is feeling like a much bigger space than I thought it would be. This might even be a comfortable living space for a full-size human. Now all we need is a roof over our head. Oh gosh, I ate a dictionary earlier, and now I have thesaurus throat I've ever had. Like, thesaurus. Let's build a roof. Now it's time to add the roof. And like I said before, the plan here is to put planks over the top that'll be held up by both walls, but I also want each plank to go a bit further back into the hill to make things stronger. So first I need to dig out a little more earth behind the back wall to create a nice shelf for the planks to sit in. And now the roof won't just be supported by these stones, but by a solid ½ meter of dirt behind the wall. As for the planks themselves, I'm using the same 50 by 200 millimeter boards I use for the walls. These are made to be framing material, so they're super thick and can span the gap no problem. I'll cut each of these to a size that allows for a 20 centimeter overhang, screw them down with a couple big old screws, then move on to the next and on to the next. As we move up, I'll also add scrap pieces between each board and its neighbors just to make sure the back end is nice and aligned. This whole thing's gonna be covered with dirt later on, so looks here don't matter. I'm also gonna add these supports to the middle because it looks a little crooked. The more of these supports we have, the better.
I cut and placed each of the roof boards, screwed them down, and kept this pattern going until I arrived at the other side. And I actually felt really good about how stable and rigid it was.
I'll just spread this out across the whole roof, cut it to size, and staple it down. Now the entire roof should be safe from rain, and the next move is to surround it with dirt. Our Hobbit house needs to be built into the side of this hill because otherwise it's not a Hobbit house. It's just a cool shaped cabin, and who wants to click on that thumbnail? The first step here is gonna be getting dirt around the sides, but I'm worried that if I just shovel this dirt onto the walls, it'll spill across the front and look really sloppy. I think the move is to build an angled stone wall on each side to kind of act as a retaining wall, and then I can pile the dirt behind that in a way that'll look super clean.
I built the same type of stone wall on the the opposite side and piled in the tons of dirt until we had one solid crest.
Hey, this turned out looking pretty dang good, but it'd look pretty dang better if it was covered with grass, so let's cut some sod.
One piece at a time, I added the sod slices across the crown of the roof, just like it was a big green puzzle. These were super heavy, and this was my best back workout of the week, but eventually it was complete.
I have no idea how the roof is supporting this much weight. I mean, this has got to be multiple tons. But hey, I'm not complaining. That's probably not what the guy who designed this thing should be saying, but it's working.
Now the roof itself is covered, but as you can see, the dirt on the side spans out a pretty good distance, so let's just keep going until we run out of sod.
It probably would have been easier to just grow grass on these parts, but that seems like it would need a longer time frame that I don't have.
This turned out looking so sick. I mean, this already looks like something out of Lord of the Rings. First to go up is the door trim, and I'll just screw the two big pieces right on top of each other. And then I'll screw one of the smaller circles around each window. I think we nailed it with the trim. Those two colors make it look super cool. I know this tiny little slice might be bothering to some of you. I'm gonna fix it in the morning. All right, big reveal. We'll see how the door looks.
And after all that hard work, my consensus was...
I don't love it. Something about it is just off. I can't quite place what that is, but am I crazy here? Does this not kind of look like poo-poo? I don't know if it's how light the walls are, how orange the door is. Something's just off about it.
So to make it less orange, I tried mixing in a darker stain over top and did that for several coats until it was noticeably more brown. But then it looked smudgy, so I tried to smooth it out with a sander, and in some weird miracle, ended up with a design that looks surprisingly cool.
I'm not even entirely sure what I did to get here, but I feel like this looks much better. It's a lot less orange for one, and I also feel like this kind of uneven pattern and texture makes it feel like a weathered opening to an Old English tavern or something like that. That's the entire vibe of Lord of the Rings from what I can tell.
I don't think I could do that again if I tried, but thanks to my freak accident, we ended up with an epic looking door.
Also, the grass is starting to give up on life, so I added some fertilizer and I'll make sure to water it every day. Hopefully we can make it green again. Now that the thing's actually looking decent, we can get into door hardware, starting with the hinges. Going into this build, I had no idea how to hinge a round door, but it turns out you do it the exact same way as a regular door. The hinges just need to be a little bigger.
So with the door in place, I put a screw into every single hole in the hinges, and to my absolute delight, it worked perfectly.
Oh my gosh, that is such a relief. I was like, surely hinging a round door isn't that easy. It turns out it is that easy. Oh my gosh, that could not be any better. Took a big L the first time I did the paint, but whew, big W on hinging the door. Is this door single and using dating apps? Because it's on Hinge. No, that was a stupid joke. Don't put that in. And I'm also adding a handle and latch to the front.
This one was simple, but got the job done.
We should probably also sauce up the back of the door. I've been so focused on the look of the exterior that I forgot to do that. And lastly, the inside needs a latch too, so we can keep out the orcs. Wait, those are the bad guys, right?
Our door's complete. I'm feeling some imposter syndrome from having actually built this thing successfully. I've seen a lot of Hobbit House builds where the door partially opens or there's a flat area near the hinge, and those are totally cool, nothing wrong with that, but from the beginning of this project, I knew I wanted the entire circle to open on mine, and that's exactly what we made happen. I'm so stoked it actually worked.
And of course the windows need to be enclosed too, but that's so much easier. I'll just fasten a slice of plexiglass around each one.
Here's my impression of Barack Obama as a window.
Let me be clear.
Is that too political to put in this video?
Now that our door and windows are enclosed, one final detail I want to add to the exterior is a little stone path outside the door. And lucky for me, there's flat rocks all over the place because this entire cliffside's made of them.
And so I picked out some nice looking flat stones and laid them out.
And I'm putting the path in by tracing out the shape of each stone with the shovel, digging out the sod to the depth of the rock, and then putting each stone back in place.
This path is basically useless, but it added so much to the vibe of our Hobbit house.
The last thing that I did mostly off camera is give the roof a little refresh. The fertilizer helped some areas green up, but other areas just died and turned brown, so I replaced them with new sod. To be fair, we're entering the driest part of the summer right now, and most of the grass in this region of New Zealand is dying anyways. Hopefully next spring, the whole roof will grow back nice and lush. And just like that, our exterior is complete. This turned out looking so much cooler than I was expecting it to. Not bad for a guy who's only seen one Lord of the Rings movie. And now that the exterior is complete,
let's move on to the interior.
Okay, right off the bat, it is already looking so cool in here. Even if we did nothing else in here, this would be a sick camping spot. But guess what? We are doing something else in here. I'm thinking we should put the bed right along this wall because one, I fit perfectly, and two, the rocks look a lot more stable on this side than they do on the other side, and I'll sleep better knowing I'm less likely to be crushed by falling rocks in the middle of the night. I'm not saying I don't trust my own masonry skills, but that's also exactly what I'm saying. And I got some pre-cut boards from Miter 10 that'll use to assemble a nice little bed frame. All right, that turned out looking really nice. It's about as simple as a bed frame can get, but somehow it fits the vibe in here perfectly. Now I have a mattress from Wastebusters to go on top of that, and a sheet, comforter, and pillow to go on top of that. I need to be careful. I checked my insurance policy, and if the blanket gets stolen in the middle of the night, I won't be covered. Next on the agenda is a wood-burning stove, which I want to put in this corner over here. I picked up this tiny little camp stove at Miter 10, and this looks like it'll work just fine. To put in our chimney, I'll start by bracing the roof with some scrap pieces, and then use the hole saw to cut out an opening. We'll pop our chimney right on through, and to keep it separated from the wood, we'll use rocks, just like I did in Alaska. And I'll cover this first layer of rocks with mortar to seal everything up, and then continue that rock pile to the top to give off the vibe that the whole chimney is made of stone.
Looks dope.
And there we go. We have our fireplace. We can keep it warm in here at night. Then in front of the fireplace, we can add a chair. I found this one at Wastebusters, which is a second-hand shop here in Wanaka, and I think it fits the Hobbit vibe perfectly. Next to the bed, we'll add a nightstand, also from Wastebusters. And to go on top of this nightstand, I have two things. One is a nice little LED lantern that'll flicker at night, and two is this absolute masterpiece. That's me as a hobbit. I thought this was really silly, but the more I look at it, the more it just feels really creepy. And now right smack in the middle of everything, I'm putting this rug. I just made it so much cozier in here. Oh gosh, are my pants ripped? I know I'm gonna get roasted for not having running water, a bathroom, or electricity in here, but this is really meant to be more of an off-grid getaway than a long-term living space, and I just wanted to keep it simple. That's YouTuber talk for I didn't want this video to take 6 months. And the very last finishing detail I wanna add to the stove is this little teapot, which is both short and stout, and looks really Hobbit.
We've gone from Hobbit House to Hobbit Home.
And just like that, our Hobbit house is complete. When I first showed up in New Zealand, this hillside was nothing but a bunch of grass and rocks, but after weeks and weeks worth of time and effort, we've transformed it into the most whimsical little cabin that looks like it's straight out of a fantasy novel.
This is something I never imagined I'd be building in my lifetime, but it turned out so nice.
I picked up these nice New Zealand flowers, and I'll just dig up bits of soil and plant a nice little row of these under each of the windows.
These added a nice pop of color against the wood, and being outside doing this felt so relaxing.
This place is starting to look like a British grandma lives here. Exactly the vibe I was going for. Home sweet Hobbit home. Now how about some supper? Good morning. Oh, I need to change into my business attire. Good morning. We made it through the night, and I just woke up to another beautiful morning here in New Zealand. Let's put on some tea. But like, you have to come with me. That's kind of how that works.